The cafe stood at the corner of a busy street in the heart of the city. It had bright lights, warm chairs, and the smell of roasted coffee beans filled the air every morning. People loved to gather there, and it had once been known as the friendliest place in the neighborhood. Friends met after work, families shared stories, and strangers found comfort in the quiet hum of cups and laughter. But that had changed now. Whenever the heavy glass doors opened and a tall figure stepped inside, silence spread across the room. The man's name was Mr. Hale. He was one of the wealthiest men in the city, and people said he could buy anything he wanted. His shoes shined as if polished by sunlight, and his suits were stitched from fabrics that ordinary workers could never afford. His voice carried a sharpness that cut through the air like a blade. The staff in the cafe knew what his arrival meant. The cheerful tone of the workers turned into nervous whispers. The waiters straightened their aprons, their hands trembling as they carried trays. Even the manager would come rushing out from the back, hoping that nothing would go wrong. Mr. Hale was not known for kindness. He enjoyed pointing out mistakes, no matter how small. If a spoon was not placed exactly where he wanted, he would complain. If the coffee was too hot or too cold, he would scold the staff in front of everyone. The customers lowered their eyes, pretending not to notice, but in truth, they were all afraid of him. Nobody wished to become the target of his anger. It was said that Mr. Hale had invested in many businesses across the city, and some even believed he owned the cafe itself. People whispered that upsetting him could cost someone their job. That was why no one dared to answer back when he spoke harshly. Fear followed him like a shadow. And the cafe that once rang with laughter now fell silent whenever he entered. On one particular morning, the cafe was filled with its usual mix of workers, students, and neighbors. The sound of cups clinking and chairs sliding filled the air. But as the glass doors swung open, that sound vanished. Everyone turned their heads slightly, just enough to see without being caught staring. Mr. Hale stepped inside, his polished shoes echoing against the floor. He walked to his usual table in the corner, near the wide window that looked out onto the street. He liked that spot because it allowed him to see everything inside and outside at once. He sat down and placed his hands firmly on the table, waiting. The waiter hurried over him, bowing slightly, his words stumbling. "Good morning, sir. What would you like today?" "The same as always," Mr. Hale replied, his voice cold. "But make sure it is perfect this time. Last week the cup had a chip in it." "Do you think I come here to drink from broken cups?" The waiter's face turned pale. He nodded quickly and rushed off, praying nothing would go wrong. The other customers avoided eye contact. Some stirred their drinks too fast, others bent their heads low over their books. A woman at one table whispered to her friend, "Why does he always come here if he dislikes it so much?" Her friend shook her head and whispered back, "Because he knows we cannot stop him." The truth was clear. Nobody wanted Mr. Hale there, but nobody dared to say it. His presence was like a heavy stone pressing down on the room. The cafe was not a place of joy anymore. It was a place of waiting for his mood to decide the day. The waiter finally returned with the order. His hand shook slightly as he placed the cup and plate on the table. Mr. Hale leaned forward, examining everything as though looking for a reason to complain. He lifted the spoon, checked the cup, and sniffed the coffee before taking a sip. The silence was so deep that the faint sound of him setting down the cup seemed loud. He narrowed his eyes at the waiter. "It will do," he said at last. The waiter let out a breath of relief and hurried away. But the room did not return to normal. The customers still spoke in low voices, always careful not to disturb him. The staff continued to move quietly, fearful of the smallest mistake. Even the sound of laughter from outside the cafe windows seemed out of place here. The cafe had become a cage of silence. It was not built by walls or doors, but by fear. Fear of the man in the corner, who seemed to control the air around him with nothing more than his presence. And so, the day passed slowly. Mr. Hale sat at his table, sipping his coffee with a look of pride, knowing no one would dare disturb him. The workers kept their heads down, and the customers longed for the moment when he would leave so that life could return to the cafe. Again, Yet none of them knew that change was on the horizon. Soon someone would arrive who did not fear Mr. Hale. Someone who would break the silence that had gripped the cafe for too long. The morning sun rose gently over the city, casting golden light across the streets. The cafe opened its doors early as usual. Workers prepared the tables, polished the cups, and arranged the chairs neatly. The smell of fresh bread and hot coffee spread through the air, drawing in the first customers of the day. On this day, however, there was someone new. Her name was Mira. She had just joined the cafe as a waitress. She wore the simple uniform like the others, yet there was something calm and steady about her. Her steps were confident, and her eyes carried a quiet strength that was hard to miss. The other staff watched her with curiosity. Some wondered how long she would last in the cafe, for they knew the truth that outsiders rarely learn on their first day. Working here was not difficult because of the customers, but because of one man who walked in whenever he pleased. Mira was shown around by an older waitress named Leon. She explained how the orders worked, where the supplies were kept, and which tables were regular favorites of customers. As they walked, Leon lowered her voice and said, "There is one thing you must be careful about. A man comes here often. His name is Mr. Hale. Everyone knows him. You must never upset him. Do what he says and keep silent. That is the only way to stay safe here." Mira listened quietly, but she did not reply. She only nodded and continued learning her tasks. Later that morning, Mira served her first few customers. She carried trays smoothly, remembered orders with care, and spoke with polite warmth. Some customers noticed her gentle nature and smiled back, feeling more welcome than they had in a long time. It was as if her presence slowly restored a little light to the cafe. But then the glass doors opened. The sound of footsteps echoed across the floor. The air changed at once, just as it always did. Conversations faded into whispers, and the staff stiffened. Mr. Hale had arrived. He walked straight to his usual table by the window. His sharp eyes scanned the cafe, and his lips curled slightly, as if he already expected something to go wrong. The staff quickly rushed to serve him, but today, it was Mira who happened to be nearest. Leon touched her arm quickly. "No, let someone else do it," she whispered with concern. "He is not an ordinary customer." But Mr. Hale had already noticed Mira. He lifted one finger and pointed directly at her. "You, come here, take my order." The cafe grew still. Everyone watched silently. Mira took the order pad in her hand and walked forward. She placed the menu gently on the table before him. "Good morning, sir. What would you like today?" Her tone was polite and steady, without fear. Hale leaned back in his chair. His eyes narrowed slightly. "Are you new here?" "Yes, sir," she answered. "Today is my first day." He gave a short laugh. "Then you had better not make mistakes. Bring me my usual coffee, dark, no sugar. And the bread must be fresh, not like the stale piece they gave me last time." Mira nodded calmly. "I will bring it right away." As she walked back toward the counter, whispers filled the cafe. The other workers looked at one another nervously. Some shook their heads. "She does not know what she is facing," one said softly. "He will find fault no matter what she does." When the order was ready, Mira carried it to his table. She set the cup and plate before him with steady hands. "Here's your order, sir. Please enjoy." Mr. Hale looked down at the cup as though searching for an error. He lifted it, sipped once, then slowly placed it back down. The silence of the cafe deepened. At last he said, "Better than last week. At least you can follow simple instructions. Perhaps you are not as useless as the rest." His words were sharp, but Mira's face did not change. She bowed her head slightly and replied, "Thank you, sir." The staff waited for her to show fear or anger, but she showed neither. She returned to her work as if his words meant nothing. This surprised many of the customers who had long been used to seeing frightened faces. Whenever Mr. Hale spoke throughout the day, Mira continued serving others with the same quiet strength. She listened to every request, answered with patience, and never let her smile fade. Customers noticed this difference. for the first time in many days. Some even began to talk freely again, forgetting the heavy silence that usually ruled the cafe. But deep inside, the staff worried for her. They knew Mr. Hale would not let such calmness pass for long. He liked to control the room with his presence, and Mira's steady nature was something he could not easily shake. As evening fell and the cafe began to close, Leon approached Mira. "You did well today," she said softly. "But be careful. He will test you again. He always does. Do not let his words draw you into trouble." Mira simply smiled. "I will do my work as best I can." "That is enough for me." Leon looked at her for a long moment, then sighed. She had seen many workers come and go, but Mira felt different. There was a strength in her that no warning seemed able to weaken. And though the staff could not yet see it, the silence that had ruled the cafe for so long was about to be broken. A storm was waiting, and Mira would be the one to face it. The cafe opened the next morning with its usual hum of activity. Workers polished the counters, arranged the tables, and greeted the first customers. For a little while, everything seemed peaceful. Laughter returned in small waves, and the sound of cups clinking filled the air again. Mira moved gracefully among the tables, serving drinks and carrying trays with steady hands. Her calm nature had already brought comfort to both staff and customers. The regulars noticed her presence and whispered that she seemed different from the others. Some even came back a second time just to see the new waitress, who did not bow her head in fear. But peace in the cafe never lasted long. The glass door swung open with a firm push. Mr. Hale entered, his tall figure commanding attention at once. The customers fell silent as if a shadow had passed over the room. The staff froze for a moment, then quickly returned to their duties, pretending to be busy. Only Mira looked up calmly as she carried an empty tray back to the counter. He walked to his usual table near the window and sat down heavily. His eyes scanned the cafe, sharp as always, searching for mistakes. He called out in a cold voice, "You, the new one, bring me my order." Mira approached with her notepad. "Yes, sir, your usual." "Yes," he said, tapping the table impatiently. "And this time make sure the bread is warm, not hard like last time. I did not pay to be served like a beggar." The words cut through the room. The waiter behind the counter flinched, and even some customers lowered their heads, embarrassed by his tone. But Mira did not move or tremble. She simply nodded. "I will bring it as you wish." She walked back to the counter and placed the order. Leon grabbed her arm gently. "Why do you look so calm? He spoke harshly to you. Most of us would shake for hours after hearing words like that." Mira answered softly. "He uses his words to frighten people, but words cannot harm me. If I do not allow them to, I will serve him as I serve everyone else." Soon the order was ready. Mira carried the tray carefully and set it down on the table before Mr. Hale. The bread was fresh and warm, the coffee dark with no sugar, just as he demanded. Hale examined everything slowly, searching for an error. He picked up the bread, tore it apart, and then sniffed the coffee before taking a sip. His eyes narrowed. "Still not good enough," he declared. "The cup is too hot. What kind of place is this? Do you think I enjoy burning my hands?" The cafe went silent. All eyes turned toward Mira. Everyone expected her to bow, apologize, and rush to fix it. That was how it had always been. But Mira stood straight and answered in a calm, steady voice. "The cup is hot because the coffee is fresh. If it were cold, you would complain that it was old. The truth is, sir, you are not here for coffee or bread. You are here to show power. But respect is not something you can demand. It must be given freely." The room froze. A spoon dropped from someone's hand and clattered against a plate. The staff stared in shock, their mouths slightly open. Never before had anyone spoken to Mr. Hale like that. Hale leaned back in his chair, his eyes wide for a moment. Then his lips curled into a sharp smile. "You are a bold one, are you not? Do you know who I am? Do you know how many people will lose their jobs if I decided this cafe no longer pleased me?" Mira's voice remained calm. "I know who you are, but no amount of money can buy the right to treat people without dignity. Everyone here works hard. They deserve respect." The customers watched in silence, their hearts pounding, some secretly hoped she would not be punished for her words, while others felt a rising pride that someone had finally spoken what they all thought. For the first time, Mr. Hale had no quick reply. His fingers drummed on the table, his eyes fixed on Mira as if studying her. At last, he let out a low laugh. "Very well, you are not afraid. I will remember this." He lifted his cup again and sipped slowly, his gaze never leaving her face. Mira bowed politely and stepped back, returning to her work as though nothing unusual had happened. Whispers filled the cafe once more. Some customers leaned close to each other and murmured, "Did you hear what she said? No one has ever dared to speak to him like that." Others smiled quietly into their cups, feeling a strange warmth in their hearts. The staff, though nervous, felt a spark of courage inside them. For the first time, they realized that Mr. Hale's power came not from strength but from fear. And now, one waitress had shown that fear could be broken. Mr. Hale remained at his table longer than usual that day. He said little, but his eyes followed Mira each time she passed. It was as if he could not believe she had faced him without trembling. When he finally rose to leave, he paused at the door and glanced back at the cafe. His sharp voice carried across the room, "We will see how long your courage lasts." The glass doors closed behind him, and silence filled the cafe once more. But this silence was different. It was not heavy with fear, but alive with wonder. For the first time, the cafe had witnessed a clash where fear did not win. And deep in every heart, a small hope began to grow that things might never be the same again. The next morning, the cafe buzzed with quiet energy. It was different from the usual heavy silence that had once filled the air. Something had shifted. The staff moved with a lighter step, the customers spoke in louder voices, and even the morning sunlight seemed brighter as it streamed through the windows. Word of what Mira had done spread quickly. The story traveled from one customer to another, then out into the streets, and soon across the city. People whispered with amazement about the new waitress who had stood up to the feared millionaire. Some could hardly believe it. Others came to the cafe just to see her with their own eyes. Inside, Mira worked as calmly as ever. She carried trays, took orders, and smiled warmly at every table. She did not speak of what happened the day before, and she did not act as though anything had changed. But everyone else felt it. The staff looked at her with new respect, and the customers greeted her with admiration. Leon, who had worked at the cafe the longest, noticed the change most of all. She pulled Mira aside between orders. "Do you know what you have done?" she whispered. "People are saying your name across the city. They say you are brave, that you spoke words no one else dared to say." Mira only shook her head. "I only spoke the truth, nothing more." But it was not nothing to the others. For years, the cafe had been a place of fear whenever Mr. Hale appeared. Now, for the first time, people felt that fear could be broken. Later that day, a group of young workers entered the cafe. They had heard the story and came to see if it was true. They sat near the counter, whispering among themselves. "Is that her?" one asked, pointing toward Mira, the one who told him to respect the staff. "Yes," another replied, eyes shining with excitement. "I heard she did not tremble even once. Imagine speaking to him like that." When Mira came to take their order, they looked at her with wide eyes, almost as if she were someone out of a story. She served them kindly, not treating herself as special, which only made their respect for her grow. As the day went on, more and more customers filled the cafe. Some came for the food and drinks, but many came because they wanted to feel the change in the air. The cafe, once a place of silence and fear, now began to feel alive again. The sound of laughter returned, cups clinked more loudly, and the workers dared to smile at one another even while serving. Still, not everyone was free from worry. Some of the staff whispered that Mira had placed herself in danger. They feared that Mr. Hale, who was known for his pride, would not let her defiance go unpunished. "Men like him do not forgive easily," one worker said quietly. "He will return, and when he does, He will not come to drink coffee. He will come to break her spirit. Leon listened to these words but said nothing. She had seen Mira's calm strength and believed it would not bend so easily. As evening drew near, the cafe slowed down. The last few customers left, and the staff began to clean the tables. Mira wiped a cup carefully, humming softly to herself. The day had been busy, but her spirit remained steady. Suddenly, the door opened again. For a moment, everyone froze, expecting to see Mr. Hale's tall figure. But it was not him. It was a woman carrying a small child by the hand. She smiled kindly and said, "I heard there is a new waitress here, one who is not afraid of anyone. I wanted to see her for myself." The staff pointed toward Mira, and the woman walked over. "I only wanted to thank you," she said warmly. "My husband works in one of Mr. Hale's factories. He always feared losing his job because of how Mr. Hale treated people. But when he heard about what you did, he came home smiling for them. First time in months, you gave him hope." The child looked up at Mira with innocent eyes and whispered, "You are very brave." Mira knelt slightly, smiling at the child. "Courage is not about being fearless," she said gently. "It is about standing for what is right, even when fear is near." The woman thanked her again before leaving. The cafe grew quiet, but this time it was a peaceful quiet, filled with respect instead of fear. That night, after the doors were locked and the lights dimmed, the staff gathered near the counter. They spoke of the day, of the customers, and of the whispers that spread through the city. One worker finally asked, "Do you think he will come back tomorrow?" Mira looked around at their worried faces. Her voice was calm as always. "If he comes, we will serve him. If he tries to bring fear again, we will not bow to it. Fear only grows when we feed it, but if we face it, it becomes smaller." The staff exchanged glances. For the first time, they felt that perhaps they could face the man they once thought untouchable. Outside, the city lights shone brightly, somewhere in those streets. Mr. Hale surely heard the whispers too. He would not ignore them. He would return. But this time, he would not return to a cafe trapped in silence. He would return to a cafe where hope had begun to bloom. The cafe had never been so busy. Every chair was filled, and the sound of conversation rose like music. People from every corner of the city came, not just for coffee or bread, but to catch a glimpse of the new waitress who dared to stand up to the feared millionaire. Mira moved between the tables with her usual calmness. She did not act proud or boastful. She simply worked as though nothing unusual had ever happened. Yet, customers watched her closely, some whispering, others smiling in quiet admiration. The staff felt stronger in her presence. Their steps were lighter, their voices louder, and their fear less heavy than before. But beneath the joy, an uneasiness lingered. They all knew the truth. Mr. Hale would not let the story end quietly. A man like him, with wealth and pride, would never forget the moment when someone had stood against him. The waiting ended sooner than expected. One afternoon, when the cafe was at its fullest, the doors opened wide and Mr. Hale entered. His presence brought a wave of silence again, though not as deep as before. Some customers still whispered. Some even dared to watch him openly, curious about what he would do. Mr. Hale walked slowly to his usual table. His face carried no smile, but his eyes glimmered with something more dangerous than anger. He had not come for coffee. He had come for Mira. As soon as she noticed him, Mira approached with her notepad in hand. Her voice was steady. "Good afternoon, sir. Your usual order." He leaned back in his chair and studied her. "No, not today. Today I want something else." The customers leaned forward, listening closely. Mr. Hale's voice grew louder so that everyone could hear. "I have heard whispers across this city. They say a simple waitress has more courage than all the men who work for me. They say you are not afraid of me. Tell me, is this true?" The room froze. All eyes turned to Mira. She could feel the weight of their stares, but her voice remained calm. "I only speak the truth, sir. Respect is not something that should be demanded with money or fear. It should be given freely." A murmur spread across the cafe. Some smiled, others nodded quietly. Mr. Hale's lips curled into a sharp line. "You speak as though you are a teacher, but I did not come here to be taught. I came to test you." He snapped his fingers, and one of his assistants, who had entered behind him, placed a small leather pouch on the table. The sound of coins inside was clear. "Here is more money than you will make in a year. All you must do is bow your head and apologize to me for what you said last time. Do that, and this money is yours. Refuse, and I promise you will regret it." The cafe gasped. Some staff members lowered their eyes, already afraid of what would follow. The customers held their breath, waiting. Mira looked at the pouch, then raised her eyes back to him. Her voice was soft but firm. "I will not take your money, sir. I have no reason to apologize. I did nothing wrong. To bow my head for coins would be to sell my dignity, and that is not for sale." Her words struck the room like lightning. The customers' eyes widened. Some even clapped their hands quietly in approval, though they quickly stopped when Mr. Hale's glare swept across the room. His voice grew colder. "You think you are strong because you refuse my money, but strength is not in words, girl. Strength is in control. I can close this cafe tomorrow if I wish, with one order. I can take away the jobs of every worker here. Then let us see how loyal they remain to your brave speeches." The staff stiffened with fear. Some looked at Mira helplessly, as if asking her not to anger him further. But Mira's face did not change. "If you wish to close the cafe, that is your choice. But know this, sir, even if you close these doors, you cannot close the truth. People have already seen that fear can be broken. You may have money, but you do not have respect. And respect is worth more than any coin you carry." The silence that followed was deeper than any silence before. Even the air felt heavy. Mr. Hale's eyes narrowed, and his hand tightened on the pouch of coins. For a long moment, it seemed as if he might shout or strike the table. But then he slowly pulled the pouch back toward himself. He let out a cold laugh. "You are clever with words, perhaps too clever. But I warn you, Mira, no one defies me without consequence. You may think you have won, but the game is not over." He stood and left the cafe, his shoes echoing against the floor. The doors closed behind him, leaving the room in stunned silence. Then, slowly, customers began to clap. First a few, then many. The sound filled the cafe with a strength it had never known. The staff, though shaken, felt a spark of pride burn in their hearts. Mira had not only stood against his money, but against his threats. She looked around the cafe, her calm smile returning. "Do not fear," she said softly. "Fear loses its power when we stand together." The cafe, once silent in shame, was now alive with hope. But though Mira had won this day, everyone knew Mr. Hale was not finished. The true test was yet to come. The city did not stop talking about the cafe. Everywhere, people whispered about the waitress who refused both fear and money. Some called her foolish, others called her brave, but all agreed on one thing: Mira was different. She had faced the man everyone feared, and she had not bowed. Mir hailed to her the whispers. At first, he dismissed them as meaningless chatter, but the more he walked through the streets, the more he noticed the way people looked at him. Their eyes no longer carried only fear. Some looked at him with pity, others with quiet defiance. He realized that his power was not the same as before. For the first time in his life, Mr. Hale felt something he had long buried deep inside him. Shame. Meanwhile, the cafe grew busier every day. Customers who had avoided it in the past now returned, filling the tables with laughter and voices. The air was light again, and the workers moved with renewed energy. They no longer trembled when the door opened, and even the thought of Mr. Hale did not strike them with the same fear. Mira worked as she always did, quietly and with steady patience. She did not speak of her actions, nor did she treat herself as a hero. She only served each person with the same respect, whether rich or poor, loud or quiet. And that was what made her stand out even more. But change was not easy for Mr. Hale. He stayed away from the cafe for several days, yet he could not rest. Each night, he thought of Mira's words, Respect is worth more than any coin. They echoed in his mind, chasing away his pride. He told himself she was just a simple worker, unimportant compared to him. But deep inside, he knew she had spoken the truth. At last, one evening, he returned to the cafe. His entrance did not bring the same silence as before. The customers looked up, but their eyes were steady. Some even continued their conversations. The staff, though alert, did not freeze in fear. The cafe was no longer under his shadow. Hale walked to his table and sat down. For the first time, his voice was not sharp when he called, "Bring me my order." Mira approached with her calm smile. "Your usual, sir." "Yes," he said quietly. His eyes did not meet hers at first. When she placed the cup and bread before him, he stared at the table for a long while before lifting the cup. He drank slowly. Without a single complaint, the staff exchanged glances. Something was different. The man who once searched for mistakes now seemed lost in thought. After a long silence, Mr. Hale spoke, his voice softer than anyone had ever heard. "Tell me, Mira, why do you not fear me? Everyone else does. Yet you stand before me as though I am no different from any other man." Mira set the tray against her side and answered simply, "Because you are no different from any other man. You have wealth, but wealth does not make a person greater. Kindness does. Respect does. I choose not to fear because fear gives you power you do not deserve." Mr. Hale stared at her, his hand frozen round the cup. No one had ever spoken to him this way without trembling. And yet, her voice carried no anger, only truth. He lowered the cup slowly. "Do you know what it means to me to hear such words? All my life, people have bowed. They have obeyed, not because they cared, but because they feared losing what I could take from them, and I believe that was respect." His voice grew heavy. "But perhaps I was wrong." The cafe listened in silence, every ear strained to catch his words. Mira's eyes were steady. "It is never too late to change, sir. Respect can still be earned, but it must come from how you treat others, not from how much you own." For a moment, Mr. Hale did not reply. He looked around the cafe. He saw the staff working with new energy, the customers smiling, the air filled with life. It was a place of warmth, something money alone could not buy. A strange feeling stirred within him, something unfamiliar yet freeing. He realized he did not want to be the man everyone feared. He wanted to be someone who was respected for more than wealth. He rose slowly from his seat. Instead of leaving with pride, he turned to Mira. "I do not know if I can change, but your words have opened my eyes. Perhaps I will try." With that, he left quietly, not with the heavy steps of a man who demanded attention, but with the thoughtful steps of someone carrying a burden. Inside the cafe, the staff and customers exchanged looks of amazement. For the first time, Mr. Hale had spoken not as a ruler of fear, but as a man humbled. Mira returned to her work, her calm smile unchanged. She knew the path ahead for him would not be easy, but the first step had been taken, and the cafe, once a place of silence, now stood as a place of hope, where even the proudest heart could begin to soften. The morning sun spilled golden light across the streets, casting a warm glow over the city. The cafe opened as usual, its doors welcoming customers eager for fresh coffee and warm bread. But today, there was a quiet excitement in the air. People whispered to each other, their eyes occasionally flicking toward the counter where Mira worked. Mira moved gracefully among the tables, serving drinks, refilling cups, and smiling at each customer. She carried herself with the same calm confidence as always, but today, even her presence seemed to shine a little brighter. She knew the story of the cafe had changed, and that the quiet courage she had shown had touched more hearts than she could imagine. The staff worked with renewed energy, chatting quietly and helping one another. They had learned that courage could ripple through a place like sunlight through glass. Fear had been pushed aside, replaced by hope and respect. Suddenly, the familiar sound of polished shoes on the floor echoed across the cafe. Mr. Hale had returned. The customers and staff held their breath, expecting the tense atmosphere that usually followed his entrance. But something was different. This time, He walked slowly, his head held with thoughtfulness instead of pride. He approached his usual table near the window, his eyes scanning the cafe. There was no sharpness in his gaze, no edge in his voice when he spoke. "Good morning," he said simply, placing his briefcase on the chair beside him. Mira approached with her notepad, her calm smile in place. "Good morning, sir. Your usual. Coffee and bread." Mr. Hale paused and looked at her with a small, almost shy smile. "Yes, please. And thank you." The cafe was silent for a moment. The words themselves were unusual. Customers whispered among themselves, noticing the change. Even the staff exchanged glances of surprise and hope. When Mira set the cup and bread before him, he did not examine them for flaws. He simply nodded in appreciation. He took a sip of coffee and smiled, a gentle smile that carried no judgment or criticism. For the first time, he enjoyed the simple moment of a meal without seeking a reason to complain. After a pause, he spoke again, his voice steady. "Mira, I want to apologize for how I behaved before. I see now that wealth and power are nothing compared to respect and kindness. I cannot erase the past, but I want to do better from this day forward." Mira's eyes softened. She did not need to say much. The truth in his words was clear. "Thank you, sir. Change is a process, but every step matters." He nodded and glanced around the cafe. "I have been proud of my possessions and achievements, but I never understood the power of treating others well. I want to learn. I want people to work with me because they respect me, not because they fear me." The staff exchanged quiet smiles. Some wiped their eyes, touched by the moment. The cafe, once a place of heavy silence and fear, now felt warm and alive. Customers joined in quietly, clapping their hands softly, cheering in small ways for the transformation they were witnessing. Mr. Hale rose from his chair and turned to the staff. "I know I cannot earn respect with coins or titles. I must earn it with my actions and words. Thank you for showing me that courage and honesty are stronger than fear." The staff bowed slightly, not out of fear but respect. Mira returned to her work, serving the remaining customers as the cafe hummed with life. She moved with the same calm strength, but inside, she felt a quiet joy. Her courage had inspired not just the staff, but also a man who had long relied on fear to rule. The day passed peacefully. Mr. Hale did not leave immediately, as he often had before. Instead, he stayed and observed, quietly watching the interactions between staff and customers. He noticed how Mira treated everyone with the same kindness, how she did not seek attention, and how her calm presence encouraged others to speak and laugh freely. By evening, the cafe was filled with laughter and conversation. Regular customers returned, bringing friends and family. The atmosphere was light, full of energy that had been absent for so long. Mira moved among them with grace, but her eyes occasionally met Mr. Hale's, and they shared a small smile of understanding. Before leaving, Mr. Hale approached Mira one last time. "You have taught me something more valuable than I have ever known. I will not forget this day. Respect cannot be demanded, it must be earned. And you have shown me the first steps of how to do it." Mira smiled warmly. "Thank you, sir. That is all any of us can do, take one step at a time and treat others with dignity." As he left the cafe, the doors closing softly behind him, the staff and customers realized that something extraordinary had happened. Fear had lost its grip. Respect and courage had taken its place. The cafe, once a place of tension, had become a symbol of hope and change in the city. Mira continued her work, her calm presence a reminder that one person's courage could ripple outward, changing hearts and minds in ways no one could have expected. And though Mr. Hale had once been feared, he now walked the streets of the city with a quieter step, carrying the first lessons of respect and humility with him. The cafe remained full of life, laughter, and conversation, and the story of the brave waitress who had faced the millionaire spread across the city, inspiring others to believe that courage, honesty, and respect could overcome fear. In that moment, it was clear to everyone wealth may command fear, but courage earns respect, and kindness wins hearts.